Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We have an update with TriStar Gold President and CEO Nick Appleyard. TriStar announced the receipt of the LP permit for the Castelo de Sonhos gold project in Brazil last week. Today, we'll be doing an investor update and Q&A. So if you have any questions, please put them into the comments box. I believe it's at the top right of your screens. And as always, today's presentation will contain forward-looking statements. You can learn more about those and the presentation on the company's website. And with that out of the way, welcome, Nick. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Magda. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Do you want me to load? Okay, here we go. All right, so I will just step through the slides here and I will try and focus for everybody's benefit on, I think a lot of people know the story a little bit, the background, so I'll try and focus on where we're at now and where we're going, rather than harping on too much about the past. I think we all know that. So here we go. Disclaimers, as Magda said, and I just said, we're gonna try and give you some guidance on the future as much as we can or allowed to. So please, take your time to have a read this. This presentation is on the website, so please take that time to have a look at that. First thing I want to touch on, and this is something that I realized fairly recently, and I haven't heard much spoke about it. There's always been a little bit of concern or trepidation maybe about Brazil. People don't know if it's a good jurisdiction or not, or you hear about it being complicated and some complex rules and some timelines that can get drawn out at times. And probably all of that is true in its own way, especially at early stages. But what I've noticed just recently is I believe that there have been more mines developed and built and put into production in the last couple of years in Brazil than in any other jurisdiction I know of. So, between G Mining, Hochschild, Ero Copper, and Aura, so you got 5 mines that have been built or being built and put into construction, all of them very efficiently. You've got good companies working behind them, of course, but the jurisdiction has to work as well. So I think this shows something that maybe a lot of investors out there don't understand about Brazil. I think it's a complicated country, maybe to get started and do your exploration and get your first level of permits. As we've seen, it takes time to get this LP. But once you get that ball rolling, it's a really good place to build and develop mines. And as I said, I don't know of another jurisdiction where you're getting these mid to large scale gold mines being built on time, on budget, and put into commercial production very efficiently. So I think that's worth taking note of, because jurisdiction is a really big issue for anyone building a decent sized gold mine. So anyway, I thought that is interesting. And by the way, if people don't know where we are about 275 kilometers south of Tocantinzinho. So where G Mining had just built that mine and done it well. We're in the same jurisdiction exactly as they are. Just on us, quick overview. This is a snapshot of where we're at. We still have the 1.8 million ounces of indicated resource and an additional 700,000 ounces of inferred. The PFS study was completed in November 2021 and had really good economics at the time. Obviously, gold has moved up a lot. We've also seen escalation of costs, but even with $2,000 gold, you can sort of see the IRRs and NPVs were high. Internally, if we do some escalating of costs, we're still way ahead of the game now. It's a very robust project, and with the gold price being around $2,500, it just gets better and better. Part of the real positive facts of this mine are the very clean mineral we have, which gives us a 98% gold recovery, not a grain of sulfide on site, environmentally very clean, massively strong community support, and a pretty well a young project in the exploration focus phase. There's still a lot more exploration to do on this project. We've homed in very quickly on a part where we think we can get that 150,000 ounces a year. So we have probably sacrificed upside exploration to date. So Castelo de Sonhos, just for those who don't speak Portuguese, the Castle of Dreams, which was a style of hit music back when it was first discovered. what's gone in. We talk about this as a permitted multi-million ounce property now, and there are very, very few of these around the world, around, not just Brazil. There are very few of these around the world. They're in a good jurisdiction. They have the permit. You have the community social license to operate. The environmental license, the EIA is approved. You've had a public hearing, but there's just a lot of other things that go into it. This slide just sort of shows, that we couldn't get to this point without the social license, without the trust from big investors like Royal Gold and Oramet and US Global and Gold 2000, continually having faith that we can move this and create a really valuable asset. Strong economics, but that's just in a spreadsheet. That's just one aspect. The LP permit and and the environmental viability that we've shown in this project. Those are all the things that go into what makes this project what it is today, and why I think right now we're at the beginning of probably the most exciting stage of this mine. This has become fairly unique right now, and on the point of unlocking all of this value. Just to wrap quickly about the economics again. As I said, we have 1.4 million ounces in our reserves based on our pre-feasibility study, and you can see at $1,550 gold we had a $400 million NPV. If you put that up to $1,800 or $2,000 gold, it went up to $800 million. Obviously, if you escalate prices and costs, it's going to be reducing that a bit, but it's still positive and it's still better than it was back then. So, we just think this mine is robust and it's going to get better and better and better. People do ask us if our initial capital, if we still stand, or if that number is still good. The answer is, of course it isn't. It's 3 years old now, and we've had 3 years of capital escalation globally. I would guide people into the 325, 340 range right now as an equivalent number. Depending on if we stay with our own mining fleet, or if we go to contractor mining, that may be a bit of variability in there. But that's the sort of number we would be talking about these days. But again, even with that number, and if we escalate our operating costs, our NPVs and IRRs are still higher than they were at the pre-feasibility level. So it's all just getting better and better. Project layout hasn't changed. It's it's still a very simple mine. Esperanza South, Esperanza Central will be the two bits that go first, and Esperanza South is the beating heart of the project. Really, it's where the higher grade is, where the best thicknesses or best continuity of ore is. That's where all the paybacks come from. That's where the 150,000 ounces a year is coming from, and that will also be our focus when we do exploration and add-on value. Extend that, because that's the easiest money we'll ever spend to add direct value to the company. Is if we can add 2-3 years life to Esperanza South at the same grade of 1.3, that value is huge. So that's still our area of focus, although there's still a large project to explore and look at. Board of directors hasn't changed, but what we're finding now is this board is coming into its own. We did a big effort over the last few years to update the board. I mean, as a company goes from an exploration project to this unique developer status where you want to be speaking to big producers or mid-tier producers and big companies and bigger financing amounts. You need a different style of board, and that's exactly what we've got with Mark Histow, with Eric Zanchab, Rod McKean, Jessica, Carlos. Who have I missed there? Myself and Mark, of course. But everyone now has a new set of skills that they bring to the table that are valuable at this time. And we have a very, very active board in this. So as we look to the future here, this board is very active and very valuable to us. It's there's almost a direct value in having some of these people on the board. ESG is an area where it's contentious at times. For us, it's been a real focus because it's something we believe in. We need to be good neighbors in these areas we're allowed to work, but it also does have a real value. It's helped us get with our public hearings, have our social license, have the environmental permit license, by being a good neighbor. And as we talk to potential partners and people who might want to aid us in one way or another to build this mine, they want to see they're not walking into a hornet's nest, and they want to be able to drive through their local town, stop and speak to people and have a positive view on this mine. And all of that is in place right now. So it does, the work we've done, again, leads to direct value to our shareholders. It's not something that's being done just to fill a website page because we think we should these days. It's something we believe in, and it's something we've done and will have real value to the shareholders. Capital structure, again, I won't harp on this too much. We're sitting at around 20 cents a share, 55 million market cap, very, very low still, but it has moved up nicely since getting the LP. So, that value has been recognized initially, and I think at only a small amount so far. I think there's a lot more to go. The other part here, you'll see our cash around 2 million is something that we're very aware of and we'll need to take care of, and I'll chat on all of that in a minute. Yep. So talking about valuations in the market, I think it's worthwhile looking at this a little bit. We have, with one of our directors, I said they're very active and very focused on the company and on the industry. So Eric helps us with these. Looking at the reaction of just a global set of companies against the rise in metal prices here. And for a while we didn't see the companies responding, but now we are seeing the EV per ounce increasing with the gold increase. It is more notable in larger companies and mid-tier producers than it is in junior explorers and developers. But even now there's starting to see something there. We are starting, but it seems like it's just the start of a change in value. It's not something we've seen marked step for step with the gold price. So I think there's still tension building in the market, and especially in the junior developer market. So, so on that note, the other, what we believe we've seen is these are some interesting, downward legs or downturns we see, downward cycles we've seen in our industry over the last, decade or two. And they generally seem to run for 3-4 years, and the general decline is somewhere 50 to 75%. So between 2021 to the end of 2023, we had a 50% drop. And that, I think, was around September 2023. And this is of the TSX venture composite. And it seemed to bottom out there. And I think that's what we saw with a lot of share prices, just bottoming out at that point. And if we sort of look at that as the start of an upturn, and the upturns usually run for, as short as a year, but 3 or 4 years is the general, but with really significant gains in these upturns. The upturns are generally shorter and sharper and harder. It does look to us like we're a few months into, hopefully a new upturn. Right now we've only risen 10%. Obviously the charts can be wrong, but it does look like we could be very early on in a positive upcycle here. So the timing could be great for us if this keeps going. A unique project with a permit in a great jurisdiction for building mines, and with companies with the appetite to build mines in this jurisdiction, we couldn't get a better situation. Just to recap on our mineral reserves, as I said, 1.4 million ounces of reserves. I've talked about this already. People who don't understand what a paleoplacer is, it's basically a reef-based deposit, which looks like this outcrop that Fabio is looking at here. And you can also see where Esperanza South has the much higher grade of 1.3 grams a ton compared to 0.8 in the more remote parts of the project. I want to talk a little bit about this upside. We drilled all of our infill drilling, a big percentage of our infill drilling at Esperanza South with RC drilling. It's faster and cheaper in general, and it gets you a bigger sample, which in theory should be better, but not always. And but it's limited by depth we will not accept wet samples. So we would limit to about 120 meters, and we could keep the sample quality high and dry. But all of our pits will optimize much deeper than that. So there is definitely some easy targets for just extending the pits deeper, doing another down dip line of drilling with core. Is an easy add-on to Esperanza South, and make those pits not 100 meters deep, but maybe 120, 130, 140 meters deep. You'll add on, you add on 50 meters depth, you add on 50 meters reserves. 50% reserves is a basic calculation. So there's a lot of potential at depth. There's also a lot of holes in this deposit. Our COO was at Tarkwa, head of resources and reserves there, which is a goldfield, South Africa, paleoplacer, very similar geology, almost identical to tell the truth. And he says that in the early days, it looked just like this as well, sort of little broken pits and isolated pods. And as they drilled it and infilled it, just all joined together. And we see that a lot in geology as you get more information. Gold is, sometimes hard to find, and you can miss it with a drill hole, and you end up putting a hole into your resource model. You drill around it and you hit it again and you fill it in. So we still think there's a lot more filling in to do, around Esperanza South. And again, that will be, for me, is the easy stuff to add on. And if we can add that 150,000 ounce a year production take it from 7 years up to 9 years or something like that, the change in economics is massive. It's really high value exploration that we would look to be doing there. And we can also get more targeted on the high grade channels and extension strikes. There's a lot more work that can be done. What we don't think we can do, and I'll get to ask this and I'll mention it, is I think we can extend the mine life. I don't think this deposit is suitable to making the mill bigger and going at a higher throughput, just because the size of the reefs we're dealing with. If you're trying to mine that at 20,000 tons a day, I think you're going to come into some selectivity issues. I think 10,000 is around about the right scale. And so, I think the work we would do would extend the life of the mine. It wouldn't make the mine bigger. And then this just looks at, Esperanza South there, as you can see, is just one corner of the project. And this was all one big fan originally. So it's all connected. It was all just one, big washout coming off of the side of a mountain or off the side of a mountain range into an inland sea or an ocean. So all of these other zones have got paleoplacer gold in them and got barely any drilling. The red dots here are the drill program that the geos want to do, but we haven't funded yet. So there's a lot of potential in all of these zones to add, a lot more gold, and it's untested, so we can't even sort of guess what might be there. We sort of have ways of modeling and estimating it, but it's, until you drill it, you don't have any facts. So there's just a lot of work to do. And this is just the paleoplacer targets. The land package, we have other targets and other exploration to do around the area as well. So there's, if I was I think you have to be a sort of gambling person to be in this industry. I would, expect this mine to get built in 3-4 years time from now, get into production, and then people would still be talking about it 20-30 years from now as it's still developing and growing. So, I think we're very, very early in the life of this mine. And that is our very short summary presentation. I know Magda has a couple of questions for me. Magda, do you want to bring them up now?
Yes, thank you, Nick. So we'll start off with an audience question. Can you tell us when production could be expected to start?
Yeah, if someone who's asking the question has got about $400 million, I can give you an exact date. Money's the question, the capital requirement. And if it's a company like TriStar trying to do it, we have to do it incrementally and stop and do things and then raise money and stop, and it takes more time. But effectively, we would like to have the feasibility study and the license to construct completed by the end of next year. And then you've got basically a standard 2-year construction time to get it built. So 2020, roughly 4 years, 3.5-4 years from now, you could be in operations.
Okay, thank you.
But if, as I said, that's one of the things we're looking at ourselves is what's the best way for this mine to get introduction. If we do it as TriStar, maybe we have to raise money to do first half of the feasibility study, second half, and things take a little bit more time.
Okay, got it. And the LP, can you kind of give us a quick overview of why it's the most important permitting milestone for a project in Brazil?
Yeah, it's Brazil have this three-stage sort of project, three-stage permits. The LLP, which is preliminary license, the LI is the installation license, and the LO is the operating license. My personal thing is I think it's pretty similar to everywhere else in the world, but they make it sound a bit more complicated in Brazil, because you still need to have a license to break ground in Nevada or Western Australia or Ontario, but they don't call it part of your main permitting license. They just, you've got to do a walkthrough to make sure that you've built what you said you were going to build to be allowed to turn it on and run it. But they don't call it a part of a triumph of licenses. So it's the same thing as everywhere else. But the LP is really the approval of the EIA. We did that 2,500-page EIA. It's the approval of that. It's also the buy-in of the communities, which is probably one of the biggest issue. I think because everywhere I've worked is if the local communities don't want you've got an uphill battle all the time. So that public hearing was, for us was the biggest issue, to make sure that we had the community well informed on what this mine is, what it will be, how it will work, what it'll mean to them. So that buy-in from the community and that interaction with the community, this is the only stage that has to happen. In the LI, you don't do that. It's just an engineering license where you work with the state authorities and say, yep, this is exactly what we're going to build. This is where the temporary camp's going to go for the builders. This is where the borrow pit's going to be for this material, that sort of information. But it's not a complicated permit to get it all. And as with the operating license, once you built it, I think I saw that G Mining announced theirs just recently. Yeah, but they've been in operation for a few months. So it's not something that stops you starting. It's just a part of the process of getting it. So this is the hard one. This is the one that takes you years to get, and which is why we wanted to get it, because we knew it would set us apart. But it was sort of choosing the hard path, so to speak, to go that way.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And an audience question: what are the next steps for implementing the project, other than raising money?
So on the project side, we would need to do infill drilling to increase confidence on the resource side from indicated to measured, and which rolls into a proven reserve. And again, that's for future financing. You'll need that higher level of confidence. So there's probably $6-7 million worth of drilling that we'd like to do, just infill, so that your first few years of mining are all on proven reserves, and there's a lot lower, hopefully no risk, but a lot lower risk of something being wrong. And then you just do a more detailed engineering of the plant and the infrastructure, the pipelines, the return pipelines, the roads, guard gates, that level of detail in the final feasibility study. That's the main stuff. Make sure you have your land contracts in place, of course. Make sure you have the minor permits in place. There's quite a lot of work on that. We always talk about the LP as being this big permit, but there's still a whole lot of minor permits that you've got to get along the way and make sure you've got them all lined up and done. And your potable water, your drilling water, if you need to cut down some vegetation, and we've got most of those and done already. So, but there's always going to be more. Your explosive storage, things like that. So getting all of that sort of minor stuff up and ready is a big part of it as well.
Thank you. And are you able to give us an update on how the partnership process is proceeding, and if you're getting the interest you expected and things like that?
We're getting a lot of interest. It's not always coming from the areas we would think it would come from, which is sort of intriguing to me. I can't give too much away, obviously, but yes, we are getting a lot of interest. And as I said, it hasn't come from the obvious people we thought it would. But yeah, it's almost a daily thing these days, chatting to different groups and different people. So
Got
that's
it.
about all I can
Thank
say.
Yeah. And so this might be a good time can you touch on the capital sources you would consider going forward?
Yeah, so what we just decided as a team is we're going to keep an open mind, and actually, internally, management will be presenting to a few members of the board just the complete spectrum, of what's out there and what's available, and that goes right through from an acquisition on one side, in partnerships, mergers, we raise equity, royalties, streams, JVs, I mean, everything, and trying to list and compare them all against each other. Obviously, some of them would get excluded very quickly. Some of them might surprise us on how interesting they look. Obviously, some of them would go, oh, well, would love it that, Barrick come in and pay $10 a share, but it's not going to happen, is it? I mean, we're trading at 20 cents and Barrick don't have an interest in the projects at this scale. So we can't make an acquirer come down and do what we want them to do. But yeah, so we're looking at the whole spectrum of things and, to find what is the best thing for this project and our shareholders, obviously. And it could easily end up being a combination of some of those things as well. But right now we're just keeping all our options open.
Okay, thank you. And then do you have any insights on the trading of the stock and with it being fairly flat with the issuance of the permit?
Yeah. I mean, I think we traded up quite nicely when we announced the approval of the LP. So I think the issuance wasn't such big news. I mean, it was comfort to actually have it in, but I think that news was already out there that it had been approved, and we're just waiting for the machinations of the organizations up there in Belém to work its way through a printer and a signature machine to come to us. So I think that news was already out there, but as we're speaking to people, I think with more time and we press forward here, people get back from their August holidays, we're going to start pushing a lot harder and trying to get that news out better and show people how valuable we are and how unique we are right now.
Got it. Thank you. And just a quick question about the LP. What does it cover? Is it specific to the pre-feas mine design? Does it allow variations? Is there like a size throughput limit?
Yeah, no, it is based around the pre-feas design. We've made a few little changes to areas that we know in the pre-feas will with a high likelihood of changing. We exclude, the last year of the mine right now as it's scheduled is Esperanza East, because we think there's so much more drilling that needs out there and the shape will change. We didn't bother permitting that last year yet, so we're actually only permitted for the 10 years of production, and Esperanza East is about the last 7 or 8 months, where we think we'll find a lot more. So we couldn't see a point in going out and permitting that area and then having to go and change it. So you can apply to change it, and there will be changes. There always will in mines as they grow. But I believe that's a normal process here. But the first 5-6 years, I think, are pretty well set now and done. And they spent a lot of time looking at the dam, and they're happy with the dam, and that's a big issue in Brazil, of course. And Esperanza South is where it is, and the plant is going to be between there and the dam. So that's all close to set in stone, and I don't think it'll change. But as you've got that, 6-7 years going and good cash flow coming in, you'll be drilling out those other deposits and making changes to them as you go through it.
Okay, thank you. And then just touching on exploration, Castelo de Sonhos is a greenfields project, and it seems to be in an area without a lot of mining history. How does this kind of play into the exploration upside?
It has. I mean, there's a reasonable bit of. There's not a lot of modern style exploration here in the area. There's a lot of Garimpo exploration in the area, and it's amazing how much information you can get from them, actually. And we've been doing a little bit on sort of human history of the area, and from that we're actually gathering data such as the Grimpos, one of the bits of information which we find valuable is they tell us, well, we were working on this creek down here or this vein down here where we found some gold, but we would only get paid 50% or would get paid 70% or we'd get paid 85%. Whereas if they're working at Castelo, they were getting paid 90% or 90 plus because the gold was pure coming from the paleoplacer. So we've worked out now, we can sort of tell what type of gold they were getting by what they were getting paid for it. So it's information that's colloquial and it's just verbal history of the region, but it does tell us, okay, they were finding gold in this stream. The most likely source of that style of gold, and that, with the other metals it's got mixed in there, which is why they might only receive 50% payment for it, is going to be coming from these, mesothermal veins in the granite or something. So we've done a lot of that, and we think there's a lot more to do, in the whole region. I mean, the exploration, like I said, it's going to go for years and years here.
Okay, thank you. And I don't see any other audience questions, and you've answered most of mine. Was there anything else you wanted to cover that we haven't had a chance to touch on?
I don't think so. I think this is it. I mean, we're really, really feeling like we've done. We did choose the hard road when we went and decided that we're going to get into that pump and get the LP, but we really do feel like that's going to pay off now, and this is where as that information, people start to realize that if you want to go to somewhere like Guyana or somewhere, I mean, God, was it 8% royalty on an open pit gold if you want to go there? And so, somewhere like Brazil with the 1.5% or whatever it is % royalty is a much better jurisdiction. And that's probably why you've had 6 gold mines built in Brazil in the last 2 years and none in Guyana. I mean, sorry, that was just one I was looking at recently. But, you do look at that, and I think people are going to realize more and more and more that if you want to build a gold mine, Brazil's the place to do it. And where's a gold mine that's ready to build? There's nothing other than ours. So, there are some really good exploration companies working and some good exploration type, deposits in Brazil, but they've still got to go through that whole LP process that we've just been through. So they're a couple of years behind us now on the timeline. So that's why we think choosing that hard road is going to pay off really nicely for us here, especially as we think we're coming into this uptick in the junior cycle. So, the timing is all looking really good.
All right, thank you. So you may have just done this, but this is from the audience, can you summarize the 3 reasons why to buy the stock today?
Yes, okay, it's a good one. 3 reasons to buy today. And we'll take today as something in the near term. It's the next news is likely to be very positive. I think, as there's nothing negative going to come out. The next news has the potential to be substantial or just positive, either way. Again, there's nothing else like us out there right now. That's just, if the M&A market is building, the companies are putting more cash. They're having higher costs. They're not putting as much cash maybe as people thought they would at $2,500 gold, but they're still putting more cash in the banks than they expected to be. So the mid-tier producers are looking for more mines, and those mid-tier producers who are the perfect targets to acquire something like TriStar or Castelo, are looking around, and they are aware that if you want to build a mine, Brazil is a good place to go, because they're looking at these stats, these things I'm showing you where 6 mines have been built in Brazil in the last couple of years, which means you've got all the staff and know-how and everything in country. So, I think that's the big reason, is there's a really good chance of very positive news. Other reasons to buy now, I mean, that's it. I mean, it's really, we're moving into a new cycle. We're moving out of the exploration price to net asset value sort of range where we should be, and I think we should be re-rated into the developer near production price to net asset value, and you're going from 0.1 to 0.5 in net asset value. That doesn't happen overnight. That'll happen in time, and I think that will just drive our share price as well in this market. And on the third point, I'm trying to think. I mean, there's 2 big points. There's, there'll be some more exploration as well. So there'll be more side news on this as well, like on the adjacent, there are adjacent properties to us where we think there's different gold sources, or the extensions on extensions to Esperanza South. Current NAV, I don't have that number off the top of my head. I'm sorry. We can get it and maybe publish it with the presentation sometime shortly. If you have a look at, I saw the question. Paradigm did a good report on us recently, and maybe we could share that with some of the viewers later on.
Yeah, I think we'll get the emails. So yeah, we should be able.
Yeah, because that would be the best. That's got all of that information. They did a very good analysis.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Nick. Thank you to the audience for participating and submitting all the questions. If anybody has any other questions, please reach out, and have a great afternoon. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.